Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, do you know what today is?
TGIT.
No, today is Location Day. You know why it's the Location Day?
No idea.
Because if you were a CBer, or back in the day, I think they still use this 10 code, you would say, what's your 1020? And you would say, I'm in West County. Thank you. 1020 is location. Get it?
Had no idea, Brad. Way to go. So is that both a CB and is that like a ham radio nerd thing too?
Well, hams don't use 10 codes. Police departments, see, what's sort of weird about this is police departments, depending upon department, uses different lingo, different codes and things like that. Matter of fact, I don't know if you remember this or not. This is sort of Brad nerd stuff.
I don't remember it, Brad.
But after 9/11, they decided they were going to, A, make radio systems that all the police and fire and ambulance would have access to, and B, there wouldn't be separate different codes and radio lingo for different departments. It would all be universal. So they tried to get rid of the 10 code, but I think it still exists. But we for example, the department I work for went by the 10 code, but we had things like we called Signal 1, Signal 2, and Signal 3, which were various things. And Signal...
I think I'm sorry to interrupt, Brad, but I think you bring up a vital point here, which is in the case of natural disasters.
Yes.
Every car must be fitted with a CB radio. You know, the CB radio industry tells me that 192% of Americans listen to a CB radio at least 3 times a day.
John, you're always making fun of me. Okay, that is John Combest, Combest, and boy, we've got some doozy stuff to talk about today. I'm almost guessing that I know, at least I think I know what John's...
You know one of them for sure, Brett.
Yes.
And you don't know the second one. You think that the second one is going to be in the top 3, but it won't.
Oh, well, I'm almost positive I know at least one of the top 3, which in my mind should be the top 1. And if it is the top 1, I'll have to redo my list. But
you're going to have to redo it, and it is number 3. But let's get into it, Brad.
Every single day, John Combest puts together this list of the important stuff for the state of Missouri. Check it out, johncombest.com, JOHNCOMBEST.com. What we do is we start the show off with John's top 3. We bring in this fine gentleman. We dig him out of his grave in Norway.
Now on with the countdown.
And he says...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts off with...
In third place...
Brad... Get ready to rejigger your top 3. You know, they say you learn something new every day. That's the cliche. And I learned something on Friday from intrepid KSDK reporter Mark Maxwell, as originally going to be brought to us by Brad's top 3, but it's John's number 3, a headline from St. Louis Public Radio. We'll start there before we get to Mark Maxwell. St. Louis Public Schools fires Superintendent Millicent Borishade. Brad, did you happen to hear this news over the weekend?
John.
It's your number 1 for Brad's top 3. I'll keep moving on, Brad. Thanks to Mark Maxwell at Channel 5, I know that Millicent's last name is not Borishade. That's the way a typical street hoodlum from Spanish Lake like me would pronounce it. No. It's Borishade. I think it might be Italian. She might be from the boot, baby. Yes, Millicent Borishade was dismissed on Friday. St. Louis Public Schools voted to fire her. Get ready, Brad. Without cause. Without cause. No cause is given. Now, Millicent, well, she says that she did not see it coming. Here's her quote. There was no conversation. I am packing up my office so that I can move on to my next chapter. Now, this reminds me of a conversation that you and I had on the show last week. Might have been the week before. My memory sometimes fails me. But within the last 2 weeks, you presciently asked me, John, if Keisha Scarlett gets fired for doing all kinds of shady stuff, and the woman that she brought in as her deputy is now the superintendent, why isn't that lady gone? And I gave the sophisticated answer of, I don't know, it beats me, who knows? Brad, do you remember asking me that question?
I do.
And I had no answer for it, did I, Brad?
No, you didn't. It doesn't make any sense.
It wouldn't make any sense at all. So here's what I find literally unbelievable. Miss Borishade is saying that she had no idea that this was coming. She was completely blindsided. Now, she does wear glasses. And if you look in the Mark Maxwell piece, and particularly in the St. Louis Public Radio piece, she's wearing a pair of Versace glasses. Before we went on the air today, I looked up a garden variety pair of Versace glasses from Sunglass Hut will cost you $422. I don't think a lot of parents in the St. Louis public school system are dropping half of that on a pair of sunglasses, but I could be wrong. Anyway, what I was surprised by when I watched Mark Maxwell's piece, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that you can find these stories by going to johncombest.com and going back to Saturday's headlines. What I found was curious, Mark Maxwell did an interview, I should say the Channel 5 team did an interview with the union president. And when Maxwell and team kicked it to the union president, I expected to see what you usually see in like a union education piece, some big fat gal or some big fat guy saying, we can't believe that they fired this person and we're going to fight. Instead, the head of the local union, a guy named Byron Clemens, was like, yeah, it was time for her to go and we support the district's decision, the school board's decision. And I'm guessing you might want to help me with this because I think you know more about this than I do, Brad. I'm guessing the teachers union was upset because Borishade supported and in fact pushed closing a bunch of schools, like consolidating a bunch of schools. I believe the union was against that. So maybe that's where heat came from. So the most important point and the part that will really get Brad's goat, according to her contract, Borishade will receive about $750,000 in remaining salary. Plus, she gets her health benefits. You know, she needs a new prescription for those Versace glasses. She gets to keep her health benefits through June 2028 or until she takes a new job. And let's not forget, she is moving on. At first, she was afraid. She was putrefied. Anyway, Brad, $750,000 she's going to get a payout of her salary. So I think that's a nice parting gift. Bye-bye, Millicent Borishade. I can't believe it took this long for the board to dismiss her.
John, this is what drives me nuts about this whole thing with the superintendents. Okay, she had no idea she had it coming. Okay, John, in the radio business, when the boss walks in and says, hey, you know your last show? Yes, sir. Well, that was your last show. He gives you a paper box, a cardboard box to put your stuff in, and they escort you to the elevator if it's on a multiple floor building, and you're out, okay? And you don't get squat. You don't get you don't get $700 you don't get $7,500. You don't get $75. You don't get $7. You don't get $7.50.
Not at all. You can't even go to Schnucks and buy a Yahoo and a donut. And before I forget, Brad, and then I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it is important to note. She said she literally put all of her belongings in a box and walked out. Security did walk her out. So I should just point that out too. She did get the walk from security. But go ahead, Brad. Pardon me for interrupting.
John, this is like if I were a parent in the St. Louis City Public Schools, I would be ape you know what over this because of the fact that let's divide that by 10. That could be easily 10 salaries with benefits and the whole bit, right? I mean, for a year.
Oh, absolutely it could, Brad.
It's 10 teachers, 10 probably 15 student assistants. I just don't understand. And, this thing has gotten so bizarre. The situation in Francis Howell, the revolving door in the other districts out in St. Charles County with Fort Zumwalt and with Wentzville, and now the bizarre situation in Des Moines. Matter of fact, the woman we talked about who was the president of the school board. Do you know this part of the story? Who's very, very.
No, I don't.
Oh, remember she did an interview with Channel 13. We talked about this. She did an interview with Channel 13 WHO TV, and she was like, "Well, I don't really know what happened." if you know the whole story, this is the guy they hired who worked here in the city for a while. Turned out to be an illegal immigrant with all sorts of criminal complaints and convictions and all sorts of crazy stuff. And she was going like, well, we hired a what do they call it? A background, a search firm. I didn't realize this, but she was apparently running for state senate, and she's been so vilified by the fact that she was president of the board, and this happened under her watch, that she has withdrawn her name from the election process. NS, I say. John, what in the hell's going on with our school systems? This is just like ridiculous stuff. And remember, John, you know what I'm going to say? You know what I'm going to say, John? You know what I'm going to say?
What are you going to say, Brad? Does it have to do with why people move to an area?
Steve Eldman said it. Why do people move to St. Charles County? A, good police protection. It's a safe place to live. And B, good schools. Why do people move out of St. Louis City? A, crappy education. B, crime and terrible law enforcement. Nothing against the cops. They're doing the best they can, but they need more.
A lot against the cops. I think people move out because there might be a data center. Let's get to story number 2.
Data center. Yes, that's what it is.
Up a notch to number 2.
A headline from St. Louis Public Radio. To their credit, they've been all over the data center issue. I bet they view it as like a good public interest story. You have a conflict between a big bad utility, and then you have people trying to save a neighborhood. Well, this story is about Ameren getting money and Ameren working with the state of Missouri. And this reporter, Kate Grumke, sets the stage by talking about a Missouri Department of Economic Development or Economic and Workforce Development meeting. So she sets the stage by the state saying, hey, electricity is important. We need more electricity. What can we do for more electricity? And on the surface, that's the headline for story number 2 today. And you can find that piece at johncombest.com. But I think the real story is buried way late in here. And there's just kind of a throwaway reference, with all due respect to Miss Grumke, there's kind of a throwaway reference to Josh Hawley in here. But what Miss Grumke doesn't acknowledge is that on Friday, after we got off the air, Josh Hawley, the populist hero, taking shots at a Missouri Republican. Here's how it went, Brad. Last week, Cindy O'Laughlin, the leader of the state Senate, sent a letter to Hawley that was pretty much like, hey, bub, you're kind of being hard on data centers. We're trying to work to figure out a solution. Data centers are important. Stop being a jerk. Josh Hawley used his Twitter account with his 11 billion followers and sent a message to Cindy O'Laughlin. Here's what it says. Cindy O'Laughlin, state politician, told me to stop asking questions about data centers and higher electricity rates. Not a chance. These data centers are massive electricity hogs. That's why Silicon Valley wants more transmission lines, solar farms, and windmills. Somebody has to pay for it all. And don't believe any politician who says it won't ultimately be you. He follows it up with a second tweet. This same politician, talking about Miss O'Laughlin, has taken over $20,000 from Ameren, the very utility she told me not to question, just in the last 2 years. And she supported the green new scam Grainbelt Express that tried to seize farmers' land for transmission lines. Not good things for Missouri. Josh Hawley taking aim at a Missouri fellow Republican. Brad, what in the world is going on here?
I told you, I have a problem with Josh Hawley in this whole thing, the deal with the transmission line thing. All you have to do, and I'll give you a real easy assignment, John, if you want to do this sometime.
I won't, but go ahead.
Drive down 94, go through Augusta, and go down to Mount Pleasant Winery, go like that road. I don't know what road that is, but if you go to the end of that road, it goes down a hill, and it turns into Augusta Bottom Road. And as you're driving on Augusta Bottom Road toward Washington, you go probably about 6 or 7 miles. You will have on your left, you will have the floodplain of the Missouri River. You will have lots of crops out there, and you will have something interesting, John. transmission line towers in the middle of farmers' fields, because those transmission lines come out across the Missouri River into, at that point, St. Charles County and Warren County, providing electricity from the Labadie power plant. That's Ameren UEs, okay? And if you look at the footprint that each one of those towers takes up, it's maybe 100 square feet. So the farmers who are farming thousands of acres, some of thousands of acres, are complaining about having 100 square foot of property, and all they have to do is just say, hey, I'll lease you that property, send me for each one of your towers, send me $1,000 a year, and I'll be a happy camper. That's all they have to do. And Josh, they're taking their land away. No, they're not. It's stupid. You know, he's being ridiculous on this, and he's being ridiculous with this. I mean, remember, was it last week we talked about the fact that he came out and said some bizarre stuff? I'm going like, okay, is this guy turning Democrat, or what's the deal with him?
He's not a Democrat, Brad, but he is a populist these days, and he is going to be running for president, maybe, in 2028. Bill McClellan had a column that you can find up yesterday talking about Josh Hawley for president 2028. Brad, we just have a couple minutes left. Can we get to story number one?
John, there's no way he's going to run for president, because I know once he gets elected to an office, he will never leave that office prematurely as a stepping stone.
Brad,
to
come on. Next thing you're going to poke at his fashion. Let's get to story number one.
I like his pirate shoes and tight jeans.
The number one.
A story. No, two stories you'll find today on johncombest.com. One is from the progressive content creator Jason Hancock at the Missouri Independent. The other piece is from a Kansas City Star reporter, Kason Bayless, from the Kansas City Star. They're about a new effort, a new petition. Boy, we spend a lot of time talking about petition drives and ballot initiatives. This one has to do with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Royals' incentives. You'll remember that this year, that at the behest of Governor Kehoe, state legislators passed a bill to give the Chiefs and the Royals incentives to stay in Missouri. We know that Kansas is making the same type offers to lure the Royals and the Chiefs over there. So this is the subject of a petition drive. And it's a petition drive that's led, at least on the intellectual side, by a gentleman named Brad Ketcher. Brad is a Democrat here in the St. Louis area. For starters, Brad, the name Brad Ketcher might not be familiar to armchair political observers, but if you've been involved in politics for just a little while, you recognize the name Brad Ketcher. He is a, dare I say, venerated man, personality, attorney, compliance guy. If you're a Democrat, you want Brad Ketcher on your side. He's the kind of guy that in a Democrat primary, you want him with you and not against you. Widely respected, I would say, by both sides of the political aisle. Brad's idea is to put forth a petition that would force the state of Missouri to enumerate exactly how much in stadium incentives have been, quote unquote, given away to the Chiefs and Royals. And instead of giving the money to the Chiefs and Royals, use that money and give it to the state from Medicaid. I probably phrased that sentence wrong. Instead of giving it to the state, use that money of stadium incentives, claw it back, and give it to the Medicaid program in the state of Missouri. Brad, on the surface, I know we don't have a lot of time to dive into this, but on the surface, what do you think of that idea?
Well, has there already been money paid to the Chiefs and the Royals?
I don't think it's been doled out, no.
Okay, so there's no money that's changed hands as of yet. As I understand it, the money is on the table if they stay in Missouri. Isn't that the way it is?
You're exactly right, Brad.
Okay, so I don't get it. So they haven't spent any money. What's his deal?
Okay, here's what it says. It would direct the state to notify lawmakers how much money was saved from clawing back the incentives. So instead of giving money to the Royals and the Chiefs, you would take that money and allocate it to Missouri's Medicaid system. You see what I'm saying? With the Trump administration cutting aid to states and Medicaid being, depending on who you listen to, in serious jeopardy or a little jeopardy, you would take these stadium incentives and instead use it on Medicaid.
you know my stance on the whole thing with the not the Cardinals, the Royals and the Chiefs. Let them move to Kansas. I mean, remember I told you that story about some. I read that somewhere that they had some economist that did the gross domestic product, the Kansas City Metro, and they said,
and it was less than 1/100,000%. That's a great stat, Brad. And I did hear that eventually on another. I think that was maybe the Show Me Institute. I know we're over time here, Brad, so thank you for that anecdote. One of the things that I would just point out is that if you were a Republican state legislator and you voted for stadium incentives, you want this issue to just go away. Excuse me. And Brad does a great job on social media. He's not one of these knuckle draggers that tweets like all day long or posts all day long. But when he does post, he points out the fissures, Fissures, not fishers of men, but the fissures in the Republican foundations and a little bit of Republican hypocrisy here and there. If you're a state legislator that voted for incentives, you don't want to talk about it at all. You don't want to talk about it in your Republican primary for re-election. You don't want to talk about it in your general election. You want the stadium thing to just go away because you're probably not too happy that you voted for it. So this is an example of Brad doing a good job as the veteran campaign brain that he is, pointing out Republican hypocrisy on these issues.
I tell you, the solution, John, you know what the solution is, don't you?
What's that, Brad?
We get rid of all the men in government and we place them with women, and women could care less. All they would care about is...
First of all, Brad, when morons say they could care less, they're actually being a mouth breather and wildly incorrect because John corrects them on this once a month. So you're saying they couldn't care less, Brad?
John, I have to go into the bathroom here and put some hydrogen peroxide on my knuckles because they're all raw.
That was a good joke from 2 weeks ago.
From dragging
and also,
on
Brad,
the ground.
we will never have women completely control government because if you think this government is shut down, imagine shutting down for about 5 days a month based on where the moon is in the sky.
That is John Combest.
It's 7:24.
BST. John Combest. This show is the BS show, and I am Shelley Barr.